Test, test, test. Testing audio, testing, testing. Test. Test, test, test. Second test, minus 15 decibels. Test, test, test. Seems pretty good. Hey, welcome, sir.
I woke them up, man.
That's good. You did my job. Good, good, good. Hey, welcome, welcome. We'll give it 3 more minutes, and then we got to get the show on the road. Somebody say JavaScript?
Yeah, this is the Unity. I did it last
Ah. Oh, okay.
Oh, you did it already. Like it's broken. Oh no.
Yeah. Never say that. Say you've discovered a new feature.
It's a new feature. Okay.
Thank you for participating in our test.
Yeah. Pick up, and then we had to make our own row. And then you're supposed to go this way. Because it's so it's all 360, so you have to do that.
Okay, guys, I think we better get the show started. We're supposed to start at 5 minutes to, so we better get rocking. Okay, eyes up here. Everybody, we're beginning now. So I'm going to need your attention to the front. Okay, welcome It's really good to see you guys. I think most of you guys I've had before at least once. I'm not sure about yourself. No? Oh man, you're in for a treat. Yeah, like in my class, I like to get very hands-on with this stuff. I like to use a lot of examples and illustrations and maybe a little humor that I think is funny. If you wish to be polite, you can laugh politely when I make a joke. I'll let you know when I have. I just did. Nobody? Really? Okay, so in this semester, what we're going to be focusing on is React.js. Have you guys heard of React before? Do you know what it is? It's a JavaScript library, basically. Has anybody heard of it or tried out anything with it? I know you did a couple of experiments there. All right, yeah. So basically, this right here has kind of taken the JavaScript world by storm. You might have heard of another competing tool called Angular. And I say competing, although they're not really. You can use them both together just fine. Basically, these are libraries created by big companies. So behind Angular, you have Google, pretty big. Behind React, you have Facebook, right? So I used to teach Angular, and about a year and a half ago, a lot of people that I know in the industry started saying, you know, man, we're kind of switching to React. And I did a bit more research on it, and I found that React has actually become a more popular tool here in North America, in parts of Europe as well. In Asia, Angular is still a more popular tool. So either one are good to learn, but personally I feel like React does a little bit nicer job on the introduction. You can get something up and running in React pretty quickly, whereas with Angular you kind of need to know the whole thing before you can start producing something useful. They're both great. I'm not slamming either one of them. We're currently developing with both of them. But for you guys and for the previous group, I thought React would be a good choice because I think you're going to see it more and more. I also think that React provides a little bit better environment for entry at the junior levels in the organizations that are using it for that same reason. If they're an Angular shop, you got to really know your Angular inside out before you can do even small things. If you know a bit of React, you can start being useful right away. So the way that I have designed the labs for this course is to focus on getting you to a point where you could work with a more senior developer and give a meaningful contribution right away. That is what I'm after. Most good companies, most reputable companies, are not going to take a whole project and drop it on you and say, here, Junior McNew guy, take this and build our company's software. They're not really going to do that, right? Not if they're a good company. They're going to say, here, meet so-and-so, do what they need you to do. More like an apprenticeship type of situation. Anybody's worked in the trades before? Like, believe it or not, I have quite a bit in the past. And, you know, they've got it down in terms of how to organize apprenticeships and, you know. Yep, you know, they've been doing it. Hey, what's up, TJ? Welcome. They've been doing it for so long that they really get it. In our industry, we're much newer, you know. So a lot of those structures around apprenticeship and so forth have not evolved to the point that we'd like them to, but they're getting there because the companies that have survived are the ones who are good at organizing that kind of thing. So I want to recognize that in the curriculum and get you to a point where you could get that entry level. Now in the later labs that we'll do, you will reach a point where you could potentially build your own things entirely on your own. This is a little more advanced. So what I want to say is, like, hit the ground running with these lessons. Because if you do, then by about the midpoint, you'll already be at a point that a more senior developer could make good use of your skills. That's what we want. Anything beyond that means you'd be able to enter in at a higher level, which is also quite good. So along those lines, we want to ask, why do we have this tool called React.js? And to answer that, we have to talk about a big shift that is happening in the web world right now. There has been so much change in the last couple of years. For example, did you know that the entire JavaScript language was rewritten in 2015? Yeah. A complete revision. It's called ES 2015 or ES 6, the sixth version of the JavaScript language. Very important to know. So we're going to be getting into that. But again, why did they need to do that when JavaScript has been around for quite a long time? Never really changed very much before that point. And the answer is that we have this shift happening between web applications and websites. So here's what I mean. Anybody's heard the term, it's an old term, webmaster? This is what we used to be called, like a webmaster. I loved that term. It made me feel like a wizard, like I'm a master of webs. Or maybe Spider-Man, But that term isn't really popular anymore. But it is still kind of applicable. Because a webmaster is somebody who works on websites. So think of something like a company's page. It's mostly information. You go there to find out information, like the contact of the company, what they do, maybe some examples of who works there, and so forth. But it's not really a functional thing, is it? Now consider another scenario. Gmail. Very different beast. Wouldn't you say? There's not really information in Gmail per se. You don't go to Gmail to get news updates or things like that. It's a very functional piece of software. Now technically they're using the same technology. They're both based on HTTP. They're both implementing servers. They both have a front end that uses JavaScript and so forth. But you can imagine the skill sets for those two things are going to be pretty different. It makes sense, right? So what has happened is that over time, web applications have become the much more desirable area to work in rather than websites. So to make that point, I did a little bit of research. Let me bring up a couple of things here. Let me start up my projector here. Welcome. Good to see you. Projector. Yeah.
In terms of React.js, in my research, I heard this is very good for rendering, especially.
Yes, exactly right.
Is that the main purpose why React.js takes over?
I would say there's three main reasons. So let me get to that shortly. I just want to start off by saying, you will understand more about React if you understand why it's here at this point in time. What need does it fulfill? Okay, so first off, you ever been here? Here, let me just kill the front light there. Nope. Nope. Yup. Hold on. I get this. Yes. Okay, so I get a lot of questions from people about wages. I think that's entirely valid. You should be asking that question. People sometimes get a little nervous to ask, like, how much should I be expecting if I'm doing this kind of work? The reason why it can be a little tough to answer that is because of that split I'm talking about. There's a big difference between someone who designs and builds websites, web pages, and someone who builds web applications. Think about what is more valuable to a business: their informational website or the software that they charge monthly people to use. What's the value to a company like Apple of something like iTunes? Enormous. You know? What's the value of their website? Well, you know, there's value for sure. So taking a look at the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, they finally do have a category for web developers. There didn't used to be a category for web developers. That's pretty significant, isn't it? You know, because like usually when they looked at the technology fields, they looked at comp sci programs. Comp sci programs don't really do web development, do they?
No, they really back-end.
Yeah, you get a little bit. You get like a little introduction to some HTML, JavaScript, and so forth. But here's what's happened in the last couple of years. The web application has gone from the back end almost entirely over to the front end. What I mean by that is all the stuff that used to be done on the server ain't done there no more. It's all moved over into JavaScript on the front end with just enough back end to make the thing work. You'll see as we get through our labs today, I'm going to show you how to set up a back end that will be entirely functional, have full security and so forth, and you will not write a single line of back end code. That is what is happening today. Now what that means is that JavaScript developers have to get a little more sophisticated because they are now doing the things that the hardcore comp sci guys used to do. I don't want to scare you with that because it's honestly not that hard. From my way of thinking, the front end's always been harder than the back end.
Yes.
It really has, but we didn't get paid for it, you know, which kind of sucked. Like, by the time you up half the night trying to figure out why something doesn't show in Internet Explorer, and yet it shows everywhere else, this is a far, far harder thing than the guy who works on the back end and has this stable environment that doesn't change ever, and doesn't, you know, the users don't have access to mess it up. So you see what they list out here, the median pay of a web developer in the United States is about $66,000. But the problem is that they don't make a separation between a website developer and a web application developer. If we take a look at some of the categories here, let me dive down a little bit. Take a look at what web developers do. Web developers design and create websites. They're responsible for the look of the site. They're responsible for the site's technical aspects, such as performance and capacity. The measures of a website's speed and how much traffic the site can handle. Web developers may create content for the site. Technically not wrong, but they kind of glance over some things like performance and capacity and so forth. This is more like, this is web page stuff. You know what I mean? Nowhere in here does it say, oh, they developed the use case scenario and create the agile scrum. You know, like you may not know what those terms mean, but you will as we continue on through this course here.
ASP.NET was a part of web development.
Mm-hmm.
Is React.js taking over that part as well?
Companies that are doing .NET stuff have a very hard time separating themselves from it. So I believe that is always going to be there. Let me jump ahead a little bit to show you another little resource I put together. So right here, I dug up 22 different companies in Toronto, like locally here, that are currently hiring. I went through and I looked at everything they were posting inside of their job requirements. And then I picked out individual postings that related to web development here. Let me bring up this one from Nulogy because I think it's a fairly normal posting here. So first off, a little note on language. They're saying web developer, but they're sticking on these words full stack here, right? Which is kind of a way currently that companies are differentiating between that person who builds web pages or the person who works on like web software, web applications, actual functional things. Now when we see this, I mean, different people will tell you different meanings for this term full stack. But the implication is that you're not going to be the person updating the company website. You're going to be contributing on product here. So as we go, well, wage 72 to 120, depending on experience. Now looking back at that was the US statistics here, but it's still pretty relevant. They mentioned the median wage being 66,130, but what does median mean? It means that some people are a lot less than that. Some people are probably around 35, around there, 35, 40, which ain't bad. I mean, when I was loading trucks for like $9 an hour, I'd have been like, woo, money train, that's amazing. But, times go on, inflation and so forth. At the entry level, some people are going to be around 35. It's also going to be somewhat dependent on geography. So recently I saw an interesting study. You see all of these lists of like the top 3 cities to work in technology and so forth, and they're always going to be in the US. And number 1 is always going to be Silicon Valley. And the reason why is because they mostly base those just around the wage that people earn. In Silicon Valley, it's par for the course to do 6 figures when you start at a place. That's just how it is. But they also have an astronomical cost of living there. Yeah. Silicon Valley, sadly enough, has a suicide problem. Because, to make that 6 figure, the life that people lead is incredibly stressful. And they're really not generally getting ahead that much because it's all going to like rent. You're going to pay like a minimum $3,500 a month for a tiny little place to live in Silicon Valley. So people live further and further out. By now, commuting times are about 3 hours to get to work. So if you're spending 6 hours of your day to get to a job, man, where do you have a life? Pretty rough, right? So the study that I saw was interesting because it factored a lot of those things in, and it put Toronto much, much higher on the scale than you usually see. In fact, Toronto was second behind one other place in Germany, and Silicon Valley was like pretty far down the list. Interesting, right?
In the near future, that Toronto is going to be the second Silicon Valley.
Possibly, maybe.
A lot of technology, we are.
If I have my way.
We want to make
Yeah. Yeah. So my point is basically like recognize that difference here. Because a lot of people when they're learning technologies like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and so forth, they get introduced through web page development, website development. But I want to show you the other side. I want to show you like building functional software using these technologies. They're the same skills, but the application is much more valuable. Now what it does mean is that with this, like for instance, this posting from Nulogy here, let's take a look at a couple more of their requirements. So they mention a few things. They got Ruby, Rails, JavaScript, React. I mean, these two are the same because React is JavaScript. And then a couple more things here. So what is this Ruby? What is this Rails? Well, this is where the backend comes from. But Ruby on Rails basically allows them to generate a lot of the backend. And so increasingly, most of the work is going to happen on the front end in React and JavaScript here. They talk about a modern agile environment. Do you know what they mean by that? Have you heard that term, agile development? Anybody? Please dive in. Any thoughts on what that means? Any answers? Good. There are no. What is this phrase? There's no dumb answers? No.
Is it agile development where more of the parties are involved at the same time as opposed to the other form, which is kind of like one department gives one thing, they pass it off to somebody else, and they really pass it off. And agile is they're all sort of involved in the process.
Yeah, I'd accept that. Because the other method that you're talking about there is called the waterfall method. Yeah, where like it needs to grind its way step by step through different departments until it finally gets to some group like QA, and then, you know, this may take years. Microsoft used to have like a 2-year development cycle for Windows. That's how long it took them to grind through the waterfall process. So Agile came along, and Agile has a few different parts to it. You have something called a Scrum.
Scrum Master.
Yeah, well, yeah, we got from Webmaster to Scrum Master. The Scrum is basically like a kind of a daily check-in meeting among the team. There's a Scrum Master, like you're talking about, who sort of organizes this whole thing. And the reason why they have that daily check-in meeting, they have something called a burn down. They have something called use case scenarios and user stories. So to sum it up really quickly, user story always has 3 parts to it. You identify who you're building this feature for, what they would do, and why they would do it. It's that simple. User stories are very, very basic, but they're very important, right? Because think of that first one. You need to know who is the person that you're doing this for. Stakeholders. Very, very important. So let's say you have a, hey, what's up there? So let's say you have a sports scores application. People can, you know, install this application, see all their favorite teams. Who's your stakeholder going to be? Anybody? Give me one of the stakeholders in this scenario.
User?
Pretty general. Pretty general. Is my grandmother a stakeholder? She's dead, dude. Not cool. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, man. I'm just messing with you. The point I'm making is that, like when you think of stakeholders, you got to get down to more specifics. So typically, you'd say something like the sports fanatic. That tells you something. You know, this isn't a casual sports fan. This is like the sports fanatic. What do they want to do? Well, they want to see current scores for their top 6 hockey teams, maybe. You know, so what will they do to do that? They see an informational grid or something like that. So this is like a typical user story. From that, the use case scenario takes the user story and breaks it down a bit more into a little bit more specifics. Now, today, I'm going to show you how that kind of user story to use case scenario directly affects you as a web application developer, because those are basically your specifics for what you need to build. Those specifics will go into something called a unit test. Anybody heard of unit testing? Yeah. It is. When I work with agencies and I talk about testing, they're typically thinking of like a QA, quality assurance test, where somebody's like trying the site and, you know, noting any bugs or problems that happen. But a unit type, it is kind of like a prototype, yes. A unit test is something that gets created before you even build the feature. It is you saying, whatever you build needs to pass these checks in order to be working, to be added into the project. Now, when you first hear of a unit test, as a junior developer, your reaction might be, oh my God, this is terrible. oh my God, this, they're going to find out I don't know what I'm doing because I can't get my stuff to pass these unit tests. But I will tell you, like, those unit tests are your best friend. They really are. Because unit tests, when they're made properly, are always very small. They test little small things. And there's a collection of them called a test suite. So what it means is that, let's say you go into this organization who's got a fairly sophisticated piece of software. Here's some unit tests. Here's our libraries we're using. Build something small. And as time goes on, you will graduate. They'll give you a little bit more, until eventually you might be the person who's actually writing the unit tests. Some of the break-off unit tests sits in the middle between the business requirement and the technical guys. So they need to be able to understand the business aspects of the thing. Yes, although no. like in a way, yes, because they do manage people by saying, here's your tests. So the end result of it is that you get what they call the backlog. It's all of the user stories that haven't been made yet. So the unit tester will take something from the backlog, make some tests for it, give it to the development team, who will then work on that, produce it. Once it passes the test, it gets added into the project, and then they'll move on to the next one. And they're always trying to work their way through this burn down, which is why they have that daily Scrum meeting where they basically just check in. It's very short usually. It's like 15 minutes. And someone just says, oh, here's where I'm at on that use case scenario. Somebody else says, oh, I'm free, you should give me something. And they take something from the backlog. And they actually chart it. They chart it like an actual burn down. Like, what they want is a perfect production schedule, just like this, like a nice clean drive to being finished. And then what happens is another burst like this. And they just keep going like that, So this is what they mean when they talk about agile development. It's an actual methodology. The other term that I'll share these links with you guys so you can check out, all these companies and what they do. And basically build your confidence that what you're learning with me is what you really need. Yeah.
Tim, is it also true that the Scrum Master doesn't have to have comprehensive or deep knowledge of, developing techniques? Meaning he can have a basic understanding of JavaScript and so on and so forth, but he more acts as a director in a way as opposed to having full knowledge of each process? I
will say yes, if that person also really trusts their team. If they're good with people, like really good with people. If me as a developer, I haven't completed, I'm not passing my unit tests and so forth, and I come back saying like, oh my God, I'm definitely going to need 2 days. This is harder than I thought it was going to be. If that person has a deep background on development, then they can either call me out on that if I'm not right, or offer up suggestions and so forth. But the other type of Scrum manager, the one who has more people skills, he may say, okay, I know Tim, I know his background. Yeah, okay, if he says 2 days and that's what he needs, now his job becomes, telling your account directors and sales teams and so forth that's the case. More like a linebacker for the developers. Both are good. Like both are great. So.
I guess the question I'm asking is, are you looking for a unicorn web development or somebody who has a basic knowledge of it?
Everybody wants that.
More of a people skilled person, because he also has to deal with the stakeholders that you said, right? And most developers probably aren't that. You know what I mean?
Well, here's the thing. Like, what you should get from this is that if you're doing websites, if you're doing web pages, yeah, they may put the whole thing on you. If you're building web applications, that's never going to be the case. that time is gone. So it's more about being a team player, about being quite collaborative, a good communicator, and so forth. Those things are equally important to your skill with code. No joke. Like, as we go on, I'll show you guys some of the GitHub projects for things that we've worked on. And you will see that it is, we use what's called a continuous integration, which means that at any time, people can be contributing into the project. And as soon as they do, someone else has to look at it before it gets included and then pushed live. And you'll see, like, it's extremely collaborative. Like, several times a day, there are these pushes happening, a constant flow of communication between developers and so forth. And I'm saying constant flow, but I don't want to freak you out with that, because it is a constant flow, but everybody gets to go and work on their own when they need to. Most of the time in my team, we're not even in the same room. Like, Adam just got back from being out west, and he was somewhere skiing in Whistler. I don't even know what he's doing. But because we have this agile development and the tools in place, he can do that. And it doesn't harm anything. Like, I just got back from 3 weeks being up at Lake Simcoe working on a solar generator project that I'm working on. Completely off the grid. And it's not a problem, you know? So the reason I'm giving all of this preamble is because developers realized we need a new tool, because this is very different from building a website, very different from building pages. We're doing software now. If we look back at the related links on the, over here, they've got this similar occupations. It starts to get a little bit more clear here, right? Like, software developers, median 102. Web developer, what they're calling a web developer, 66. It's almost double, you know? Not quite double. Interesting, isn't it? And of all software development, the area that has the most entry points right now is for sure web applications. Think about it as in terms of a company. If what you're doing can be done as a web application, you want to do that. Think of all the complexity. For instance, if you have a software that's being distributed through physical media, almost no companies want to do that anymore. Anybody plays video games? Where's physical media going? You know, Steam is killing it all, because web distribution is the way that you want to be. The other big advantage of a web application is that when you need to make changes and fixes or roll out new features, it's instant. You don't have to require anybody to install and update. They go to your hosted area and it's there. They just see it. So companies like Basecamp and FreshBooks and so forth that do web applications have proven to be extremely profitable and more agile. When their users are asking for something, they can roll it out almost instantly, which is a big, big advantage in business. So a lot of existing companies have been trying to move towards doing web applications, and most new startups, they're doing web applications. They also do apps, but those apps are usually just a front end to their web application. It's all running off the internet.
Big data is also.
Yeah, so when you say big data, it is pretty much internet related, because that's where you're going to gather all that data. So this is good news, you know? Like, this means that there's a lot of opportunity for you guys. So this sets the stage for introducing our React.js. And why do we need it? Well, we need it because web applications are the big thing now. That's what you want to be doing, in my opinion. It's just a better environment all around for you to be working in. In order to do this, we have to go to a component-based system. Now, I'm going to show you hands-on what I mean by that. But essentially, I can kind of summarize it like this. When you're building a web page, you're building a website, you work with the document object model, the DOM. You would have heard that term before. And the problem with working directly with the DOM is that the DOM is what we call like a giant global variable. Have you heard that term? Global variable. What it means is like you've got this variable that all pieces of your application can access, right? So let's say this marker is my global variable, and I'm like, oh man, I really want to know, like I gotta keep track of this marker because if I don't have it, I can't write on the whiteboard. I'm gonna look like a fool in front of the class. So what I'm gonna do is put it right here beside the thinger, eraser, right here. Great. Now I know it's there, I know it's there, I know it's there. I'm gonna walk over here. Any one of you guys who just saw me do that knows where the marker is and can move it. Does anybody move it right now? Someone moves it, right? In this scenario. Great. So then I'm like, no. You're being a good program. Be a bad program. Okay. Go away, hide it. So I'm like, that's an interesting poster. Well, I better get back to class now. Good thing I know where my marker is. Oh my God. And now I'm questioning my brain. Like everything breaks down, right? And that's what the DOM is. Because if you think of it, every piece of JavaScript has access to the DOM, doesn't it? I'll give that marker. Every piece has access to that. So the big problem that we've always had to deal with is that this piece of code over here sets something in the DOM. This piece over here changes it, and now this one breaks. And maybe half a dozen more break because they were all counting on it being, like that inside the DOM. Think of it. There's no piece of JavaScript that doesn't have access to that. That is a huge, huge problem. That is not good at all. So let me flip to my whiteboard. Good thing I got a marker. Let me just kill that projector for a second, and we'll jump back to the whiteboard. Now, just so you guys know, I am streaming all this right now onto YouTube. That's why I've got this little microphone on and this camera set up. I point the camera like at the whiteboard here. Otherwise, it's my desktop that I'm streaming. So, so you guys will not be viewable inside the stream. But it means that if you need to catch up on anything, then you can review the stream later on, which has proven to be pretty helpful. So, React. The big trick that it does. Here's my DOM. Oh my God, what'd you do to my marker, dude? I think this marker's dying. Hold on a second. Yeah, here's a good one. So here's my DOM, right? And, think of your typical web application. Think of, what Google does. Usually you have like a menu bar, right? Then over here, maybe you're going to have the good old hamburger button. Maybe a little gear here for settings and so forth. This maybe opens up like a left-hand drawer for a navigation purpose, something like that. So these things are all inside of the DOM. And in the past, the JavaScript would work directly with that. And that causes those problems that I'm talking about. What React does, and this gets back to your earlier question, Amit, React inserts in between something called a virtual DOM. All parts of your code now no longer directly access the DOM. They work with the virtual DOM. So behind the scenes, if we want that menu bar, there's going to be a part of the virtual DOM that we call a component. And in order to create this, we work with the component, not with the DOM. So what it means is that so the first part of it is like no direct access to the DOM. That solves a big problem right there. The second part of it is modularity. What do I mean by modularity? You've probably got kind of an idea. What it means is that you're no longer building this thing as a page. You're building it as a set of components. Every little piece here is going to be a component. Even the little items inside of here, they're going to be components. So what you have is many small little mini applications working together. What this means is that instead of directly accessing the DOM, we will access the virtual DOM. And behind the scenes, React is monitoring all that. Yes, we do. Yes. They're both still there, but we really never touch this anymore. We put a big barrier right in there. By doing this, we automatically get rid of that global variable problem that has like plagued us for so long in doing this stuff. It's really a nice way to work. Now once we have that, this second one, modularity, you can probably get right away what that means. It basically means that we're going to have all these small little pieces here. Every little piece of our view is going to have a corresponding component, maybe 2 or 3 components all working together, but they're all going to be really small, and they're all going to be nicely encapsulated, which is a great way to work. You know, this stuff gets tough because you have this big monster piece of code to look at. You start doing all this scrolling up and down. You think about it. Every time you scroll, you're putting more stress on your brain. Scroll down, you got to remember what was up. Scroll up, you got to remember what was down. It's like constantly your brain is being challenged. So instead, we want to break it up into small little pieces of code. Really nice. You'll see how small. We're going to write one very shortly. And then the third is that once you have no direct access to the DOM, and your thing is broken up into all of these little components, testing becomes much more viable. People have tried for years to implement unit testing right on the DOM. That's a big problem, because the DOM isn't the same in every browser. In fact, it's different even between versions of the same browser. Like, you know what version of Chrome we're up to now? I don't even know. It's like stupidly high number. And so unit testing has never really been, you know, they've done it, but it's always been extremely, I like a good entrance. The DOM has always, you know, been a big problem for this. So you start to see like this old technology, the DOM, like it's really kind of messed us up over the years. We have a solution to it now. And that solution is React. So this is why it has kind of caught the world on fire. And so many people have been trying to learn it and moving over into React. And so you guys are going to get to use it. That's pretty exciting. So let me get away from all this theoretical stuff. We will get down to business, and we'll see how easy it is to write your first component. So I've got a couple of tools to introduce you to. For anybody just arriving, I'll mention again, I'm currently streaming this class. So it's going on YouTube. This is to help you later on if there's something you want to review. YouTube saves it, so just be aware of that. And I want to introduce you to the second tool that we'll be using, which is called Leaflet. I've had some of you guys before. In fact, I do believe it's with you guys that we created the first version of Leaflet. I know some of you guys have had some exposure to that. This tool has come a long way since then. We've been in constant development since that first group there. And it's becoming a really nice piece of software. I'm pretty proud of it. So for you guys who already used, yep.
Like which one is better, React.js or Angular.js?
Oh, missed the first part of the class, dude. Covered. Check the stream.
Oh.
But in short, they're both equally good. And the list of current jobs that I was showing was skewing a little more towards React, maybe 60% React, about 30% Angular, and 10% .NET. The reason I think React has maybe got a little more appeal for you guys is to get an entry position in Angular, you really need to know a lot. You basically need to know how all of Angular works before you can get building something. React isn't like that. React has a gentler entry point for people who are newer to development. So the way I see it, if companies are switching over to React in North America, it has an easier entry point. That's perfect for you guys. So it's a good question. All right, so let me bounce back to my desktop here, and I'm going to show you guys. So for this first little part here, I'm just going to get you guys to watch me for a second. And I'm going to just log out for a second here. So just, oh, I should turn the projector on, yeah? Okay, so we're on to the tools portion of the thing. So we're going to use two tools primarily. We're going to use Leaflet, which I'm going to show you in a second. And we're going to use CodePen. I know a lot of you guys have a CodePen account already. Partway through the semester, we will jump into another IDE called Cloud9 as well, which is a little bit more advanced tool and will allow me to, in the later sessions, to show you some more sophisticated things. But CodePen is a very, very nice editor with a very low barrier to entry. So I like it quite a bit. So I'm here at Leaflet. And so what is this? Well, basically, this is a tool we created to assist you in learning development. So I'm going to create an account here. And so just watch me for a second here. Some of you guys will already have accounts for Leaflet. I don't know if you will remember what email that you used or what your password was. So let me just kind of walk through this.
You got a forgot password.
Yeah. So watch me for a second here. So at the login here, I have two accounts. I have like a student account, and I'm going to use that right now. And then I have my instructor account. So let me walk through with the student account first. So mine is Timby at timby.com. So let's talk about this email address, first of all. This system is going to send you emails that are relevant to your projects that you're doing. So you're going to want to use an email address that's like real. The other thing to be aware of is that if you use your Seneca email on this, like everything, it's going to quarantine it when it sends you something. So you may not see it unless you're regularly checking your quarantine. So just be aware of that. You can use whatever email address that you want, but you'd use a real one. And the other thing I would advise is like use one that's going to stick around, because you guys are going to be graduating. And you know, your Seneca one will disappear. I post information and job opportunities and new courses up in here. I actually have a second React course that I'm doing for recent graduates right now. Hopefully you guys will not run into this scenario, but because I think your curriculum is a little different. You're on the condensed course, so hopefully you don't have a lot of other highly technical subjects on the go at the same time. Previous group, it wasn't really like that. So they had a hard time focusing on my stuff because they also had Unity project and other different projects on the go at the same time. So for those guys, for the ones who were trying hard, I'm giving them like a free course right now, which is going to be like awesome. So my point is use an email address that's like a valid one, because I think you're going to find this tool really useful. So I'm going to, so what you would be doing is if you're making a new account, you would be clicking on the not a member yet right here, in which case you're also going to have a field where you can fill in your name. Can you do me a favor? Everybody wants to use pseudonames and stuff, but at some point I got to take the information out of here and give you actual grades in Blackboard. Blackboard has no API. It's a piece of crap. So like use your real name. Otherwise, I'm going to be like, if you call yourself Mr. Roboto or something like that, like I'm going to be looking all over the place trying to find a Mr. Roboto in Blackboard, and that's going to be problematic. So please, please, be kind to Timmy and use your real name. So I'll go back to the already registered here, because I already made my account. I'm going to punch in my password here. Now, if you have a concern about password, what I'll mention is that this is 100% secure because we do not do the collection of the passwords. We're using a service called Firebase that I'm going to be showing you guys. I'll be teaching you how to create a secure login like this, which is probably the most essential thing when you're building web applications. You've got to have some kind of secure authentication. Every web app ever uses this. So I'll log in, and when I log in, I would see my courses right here that I'm already enrolled in. I would see who the instructor is, which is like me, and then what class that I'm in here. So scrolling down, I can see what courses are available. So take a note of this, guys. The one that you're going to be looking for is called the Real World React. Vanilla.js is not for you. That's like basics stuff. You're going to be looking for Real World React. So, yep. So when I click on the register, oh, thank you. It's come a long way, right? From that first thing we had. So then down here, it shows me the classes that are available. It shows me that it's 7 weeks, that it's starting, well, today, and you know, and the class size capacity here. So you just click on the little thing here, enroll, and then boom, just like that, it's going to move up into your courses. The button has now changed, and when I click it, here's all what we're going to be doing. This is the entire curriculum for you here. So we've done a shit ton of work here. I made more than 50 examples during the last 3 weeks. My little fingers were just like down to little nubs. My eyes were like red and bleeding. And yeah, I basically took off, went up to my odd one is what I call my solar generator. Powered off the sun and just mashed on code. So I think we've got something really good for you here. So before I go further with this, let's see if we can get through the registration process here. I'm going to log out, and I'll log into my, my own instructor account here, because I'll show you kind of a neat little feature. So because I'm an instructor, I basically have all the courses in mind. It's going to look a little more full than you guys, but it's the ODD 420. And then the class, the only one available right now is this SAA. And now as I click on the first lesson here, whoa, look at that. All these people. Oh, snap. It's working. All these people are registered. So like 16 people have completed the registration right now. So this whole system is real time. Everything that you do inside of here happens in real time. So as you guys are registering, you'll appear inside of here. This number increments and goes up to 17 and so forth. So, so go ahead and take a minute to get yourself registered. So if you've already got an account, that's awesome. I can see here like a lot of people have been able to log in with their account. That's great. Quick question. If you were already registered, you see the course you already took with me, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And if you go to any of those labs, you're going to see what you submitted as well. So this system has gotten pretty darn good because it actually collects together all of the feedback with the work that you're doing and puts it in the same place, which is really great. A couple other things I'll talk about. You're going to see your grades every week. Every time we do a lab, so this part's important, guys, so listen up on this. Let's use this first one as an example. It's saying that Tuesday, July 4th, which is today, we're doing our lab. What I'm going to get you guys to do is to make a, not right now, just bear with me for a minute here. In a second, we'll get hands-on. But basically, every class, you're going to have a URL that you're going to submit into the system. I don't see the submission field here because I'm an instructor, but on your screen in Lab 1, you probably see a URL entry area. So go ahead and click on that. Yeah, see how you're right on the top there? Yeah. So you know what? Let me log back in with my student account for a second here, so I can sort of walk you through what you'll be doing. I think you're going to like it. So I'll jump out of my instructor account. Just so you know, the logout is over here at the bottom of the navigation. Boop. Now I'll log back in with my there we go. So here I am as student Tim, and I'll click on my real world React, and I'll go to Lab 1. And so here's what I see. This is what you should see as well, that you are sorted to the top of the list here with a little star, because you're a star. And then you've got this URL submission here. So let's talk about that. In my class, I use online editors. There's a whole bunch of reasons why I do that. I used to teach these courses with the normal tools like, I know you guys would use something like Dreamweaver, or maybe Sublime Text or Notepad++ or things like that. And here's what happens when in that scenario. Nita has some kind of a problem with it, right? No, purely coincidence. Okay, not Nita. Amrit has some kind of a problem, right? So I gotta pause the class, I come over here, we have to look at it on his desktop, we figure it out and so forth. I guarantee that problem Amrit is having, half a dozen more people are having. So it makes for a class that's very slow paced because I should have had a way of showing how I'm fixing this thing for Amrit. Other people, you guys should be able to contribute and say, oh, try this, here, check that, And that's what we've created here. This is what using a shared online editor allows us to do. So I completely switched over to doing it with online IDEs, and I'm not going back. So if you haven't done it before, it might take a little bit of getting used to, but I know you're going to like it. It improves everything.
Are we going to
So
use Cloud9 for the URL?
eventually. partway through the curriculum, we're going to switch to Cloud 9, but the first lessons we're going to do with CodePen. Yeah. So in a typical scenario, today included, you would be creating a pen inside of CodePen. Once you do that and save it, you'll have a URL that you'll be able to enter into the URL field here. Now, this is important because basically 2 days from now, on Thursday, we have this second point, pens are ready for instructors to review and provide feedback. So here's the other thing that you need to know. It's not just Timmy. I have other people who are there to help and mentor you. So currently, 2 of them are from my company. So we got Adam Sullivan, who's a very long-time developer, awesome guy. He's one of those guys who can, pick up a new language like that, and he has a ton of experience. He's built applications in iOS and Android. He's done Java. He's done streaming services. He's, and of course, web applications. He's very, very well versed. Then I also have Devin, who was actually in your program. And she's been working with us for over a year now and doing fantastic. So we have a couple of different perspectives there. Devin is very talented and a bit, Devin, if you're watching the stream, just sorry to embarrass you. But the fact is, like, she's gone through what you guys have gone through not that long ago, and we'll understand your concerns. So we have both highly experienced and a little bit newer to look at your stuff and help you and mentor you. Have a couple more guys from outside of my company, which is pretty exciting because they can bring a perspective of what they do inside their companies. So the way they do it is by logging into Leaflet. They have an account as well. And so they will actually go and look at what you have submitted. So it is very, very important that you submit at the start of our lab. Okay? That may be a little bit of a new idea for you. Our industry is the only industry where you submit the work before you've done it. Okay? You catching that? I really want you to get used to that because that's the way it's done. If I'm wanting to build an application or something like that, the first thing I'm going to do is create what they call the repo, the repository. And then I'm going to invite the people into it who are working with me so that we can get the collaboration going. They can watch and they can step in where I need help and so forth. That's a different idea to wrap your head around. Because usually in school, you want to take every second of time you've got right up until the last minute before you turn it in, right? Because you could always try and make it better or add something more into it. This don't work like that. And it really shouldn't work like that. Because the result of that kind of a workflow is at the end of the semester, you are dying. You have so much pressure. So many things are trying to get done. We want to avoid that, right? So my curriculum is a lesson-based curriculum, not a project-based curriculum. Participation is very important. Every single week, you want to be participating. You don't want to fall behind. And it's easy to not fall behind. You just got to be consistent. That's the kind of developer you want to be. Okay? So if you don't, if you don't submit on the day of, let's say you got sick. Let's say you were bitten by a scorpion. And for some reason you couldn't do it. You have up until this 2 days from the lab to submit it. If you don't, it's an automatic F. Yeah. But be safe. All you got to do is submit the URL at the start of our lab. And then you're safe from that automatic F. The software does it automatically, all right? So just, typically I've seen people get stung once or twice at the start of the semester because they're really not taking it that seriously. And like, beautiful thing about software is I automated that. If you don't have anything submitted within 2 days, it means that you weren't in class, you haven't done anything, and you couldn't even copy and paste a URL. That's enough. We're in Jimtown, like where I come from, that's pretty much as bad as it gets, okay? So just don't let that happen. I know I've kind of hammered on that a little bit, but I just don't want you to get, caught by that. So today, when we get started, the first thing you're gonna do is pop a URL inside of here.
Do you have to fork a code pen in order to pop it in?
Yeah, well, yes. Give me a second though. You're one step ahead of me. So the benefit of this is that, one, you're going to get a lot of feedback for the work you're doing. And I'm not talking feedback like, oh, your thing doesn't look pretty. We go in and we look at your code. We go in there and we look at every single line of code that you do, and we're there to help you. The other big benefit of this is I don't give any blanket assignments. There really aren't assignments in my class. Instead, what happens is when we look at what you've done, we do an evaluation and we give you a little challenge that works for you, all right? Let's say you're super strong on CSS. Well, we're probably not going to challenge you on CSS. We say, okay, you're cool on that, that's great, awesome. Can you try this little thing in JavaScript? You know what I mean? Because I'll give you an example. In my second semesters, I had one guy who's been programming for 17 years. He's programming Go right now, which is like a brand new language. And I have other people who've never written a line of code. How can I give a blanket assignment in those scenarios? It makes no sense at all. Some of you guys in the first semester got kind of stung with that because some people had some background, some people don't. So the point is, with the system, the feedback and the challenges you get are going to be customized for you, right? So we're there to help you. This is all there to assist you, but it all is based on you participating regularly, okay? So let me jump back. I'm gonna log out of my student account. Now we're gonna start to get a little hands-on here. Is everybody registered okay? And everybody can see lab 1? Okay, I'm gonna go back to my instructor account and I'll show you a couple of the resources that are available to you there. Now just while I'm up here, you notice the My Profile and Settings. If you click into there, you have an opportunity to edit this stuff. So if you click on the little pencil here, you can write a little, you can update the name if you need to. You can give yourself an avatar image if you wish. So there's 2 ways you can do it. If you have a link to some image that you use all the time, you can just drop it in there. Or if you click on Choose File, you'll go into the file browser and you can locate some image and upload it. And so you've got a little bit of customization of your profile settings there. Boop. So I'm going to log out, jump back in as professor. Oh, better make sure that I'm streaming my desktop. Yep, good. Okay, great. To the right here is general announcements. So you will, they are filtered, right? So you will see announcements that are relevant to your courses that you're enrolled in up top. And then they get more general as you go down. So the ones at the bottom are going to be general announcements, maybe about events and things like that that are happening. So I got to get on the ball with my announcements because they're pretty old by now. But with the start of a new semester, we will get new announcements going on. Sometimes I'll put files for you to download inside the announcements, so it's worth keeping an eye on.
Will they link it to our emails?
Not yet. Announcements don't get sent to you in an email yet, but we might do it. We may do that. We're trying to make sure we don't spam people, because I hate that, you know? I used to use Basecamp. You guys remember Basecamp? Basecamp has a bit of a spam problem. I'm sure I don't need to tell you guys who have used it. So we're making sure that we don't fall into that. Let me go into my Introduction to React here. And so up here where it says fork, well, right here, there's a link to today's lesson that we're going to work on. If you click it, it's going to open up in a new tab for you. And here's a little blank pen. Does anyone not have a CodePen account yet? You're going to need that. So go to codepen.io and get yourself the free account. Don't pay the money. If Chris from CodePen is listening, I did not just say don't pay the money. But the point being, the free account will let you do pretty much everything the pro account can do, with one exception that I'll show you guys. If you, actually, I put a link here. If you go back to the main settings, or sorry, lab 1, and then down in the resources, down here, there should be a link to CodePen. So you could go from there. Yeah. So take a minute. If you haven't got a CodePen account yet, go ahead and get one. So while you're doing that, maybe I can talk about, what is this CodePen thing?
That link is not opening yet. When you said fork on top, it shows this close to
Oh, that's a description of forks.
Oh.
So you want this one.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Let me do that again for anybody that missed that. So basically, at the top, right here, this is a link to today's lesson that we're going to be working on. Yeah. And then underneath here, this video, that's the stream. So if by some chance you were checking it out from elsewhere, then you got your lesson right here. You got your stream that you can watch right here. And you should be able to follow along pretty nicely. So with the lesson open, see how I've got this purple bar up here? What this means is that I'm in what they call the professor mode. So if you keep an eye on your screen there, as I start making edits in here, you'll be able to see those edits. So What is pause and play? That wasn't there yesterday. What? What is this? Yeah. Oh, that's crazy. Huh. I think it lets me like pause it if that was never there before. They just put that in today. So yeah, I don't know. But the point I was making is if you're keeping an eye on your screen, you can see my code, right? Do you see that update? Maybe, do you have to hit pause and play? Is that it?
Pause and play, no? Do we have to click fork? Or
No. You should be seeing these updates. Maybe I have to do this. What about now? Do you see it? Nope. Oh, geez, you know why? I'm not logged in. Oh, snap. Jeez. Oh, gosh. So I was basically a student there, not the instructor. Oh, that's embarrassing. I can't believe he did that. You'll have to forgive me. Like, I haven't touched this particular laptop since last semester. Okay, so now I'm logged in. That's why I never saw that play pause. I'm always the instructor. I've never had the student. Okay, you can see that, right? Okay, great, cool. Not only can you see it, but these areas are selectable for you as well. So let's say, for instance, in a second here, we're going to start putting in some script tags. We have these really long URLs that we need to load. Maybe you grab them from my code, you know, just so you avoid a typo. But I do want to say, you don't want to be just copying my code and dropping it into your pen. Like that's what you don't want to be doing, right? Use the copy and paste selectively here. Because like, if you look at my grading rubric that is with each lab, copy and paste is not going to get you far, you know? When I've just said, like, we're going to look at every line of code you write, we're going to know if you are straight up copy and pasting, okay? You're going to have a lot of opportunity to customize this and make it your own. We're going to help you do that. So again, let's get back to the schedule. So let's say 2 days from now, you get some feedback, and you look at your grade and you're like, oh my God, it's a C. Well, there's a good chance that your instructor is going to say like, okay, you followed along, you did what we've done, but now, you know, let us see a little bit of imagination in it, right? Don't use the exact same stuff that Tim is using. See if you can customize a little bit. Make it your own, because like, if you're going to stick with it and learn to do web development, that's what you got to do. You have to make things that you care about. Put it out of your head getting a job. That sounds terrible, right? But like what I'm saying is stash all that. Just set it aside and instead focus on, can I make something that I would use? Can I make something that's interesting? Because that's going to actually get you that job, you know? So I'll talk about that as we go along a little bit more. Okay, shall we get going here? So what you guys are going to do for today, see this fork button? You're going to go ahead and hit that fork button. Now don't make my mistake. Make sure you're logged in to CodePen. Are you logged in? Okay, good. So then hit the fork button, and you'll notice that the URL has changed now, right? So the URL of your pen has changed because it's now in your account, okay? So hit the save button, first of all, just to make sure you've saved it before you try and submit it. And then you're going to copy the URL and put it into that little entry field that you have. Oh, TJ's in, Amit's in. Boom, you see that? It's all real time. It's like a game show almost, right? So as you are submitting your URL, it's getting time stamped to show that, yeah, you submitted it when you should. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, let's hit the view it here. There we go. Yeah, that's yours. So grab that.
And go into submit?
Yes. Yeah, give it a try. And then when you do, you'll join the list of people with these appealing checkboxes. Yeah.
How do I open it? Like, it's everything I just created my account.
Uh-huh.
Then if a project says this.
You're going to look more in the pens area. Yeah. Okay, cool. So you are logged in. Okay, so go to Leaflet. And then this green one, yeah, hit that. And now if you hit fork right here, and then, you wanted to hit that little view it. They made that a little bit fast. But that's okay. So now go to, click on yourself. and go to pens right down there. This one here, yeah. And then go to forked. There it is. Yeah. So now if you copy that URL, you'll be able to submit it. Yep, toss it in there. Perfect. Great. Awesome. So then you'll see like grade NA, not applicable, because like we haven't looked at it yet. But 2 days from now, when your reviewer, your mentor goes in to take a look at that, you'll see a grade starting to show up. Now the thing is, like, that grade isn't finalized at that point. You have up until the next lab to keep working on that. So how do you, if you got the C or whatever and you want to, you know, do better than that, how do you do it? Well, there's a few ways you do it. You know, one, of course, is like doing what your instructor asks you to, you know, working on it, trying. But there's more ways than that. It's also little things like, did you respond when you got feedback? So let me show you what I'm talking about. Let me pick on somebody here. Who have we got? Let me click on Harendra here. So I'm going to go to review. And so right over here on the right, here's the pen. This is what he's working on right now. Well, yeah, if I see this, okay, so let's do a little scenario here, right? This isn't for real. This is just to show you how this works. I'm going to go over in here and I'll be like, hi, Harendra. It looks like you have followed the lesson and completed the code, but there is very little variation. Could you update it to show some things like your name and what you are interested in? Now, Harendra, if you are in this feedback area, again, in real time, you will see that appear. So how do you get to it? Well, you click on the link back in your lab there. So right over here, feedback. Now, the other thing that would have happened is because I just gave you this little piece of feedback, you would have got an email to the email address you used. Ah, you got it. It's working. Yeah. So the only emails really that you will get from the system are when you actually have a piece of feedback to look at. That's the only emails it's really going to send you. So that's pretty nice. It's all new, man. We got so much new stuff in here. So then, yeah.
So there was also the issue with when you fork your pen, it creates new, right?
It does.
So then, are we going to have to still go back to the original one that we submitted in the URL? You can't see the new one that we have, right? Like when you fork it, does it create a new URL?
It does.
So then,
so this is Harendra's, because he forked mine, and so the URL is now unique, and it's in his account.
But like for you guys from marketing, say I forked it, and I'm now working on.
Oh, right.
Right.
Only what you submitted will we be able to see. So the question that Mike is asking is like, let's say I'm working away on this pen, and then I fork it, we won't be able to see it at that point, okay? So whatever work you do, you gotta make sure that it gets back into this one that you submitted, or we won't be able to see it. There's no way to track forks, unfortunately.
We can make online editing for that.
Ah, yeah, we're working on it. We are working on it. Yeah, so you see how this works, right? And then I'm not gonna do it right now, but because I'm a professor, I would give a grade. You know what? I am gonna do it right now. Here, just so you see what we do. So I would say, you know what, this is a solid C. Yeah, yeah. Because,
come on, man.
no way, man. Because I'm looking at it and I'm like, this could have been done with a Control-C, Control-V. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I can't prove that's what you did, but what I can say is it lacks originality. It lacks any, you know, it's boring to me. Basically, if it's boring, it's going to get a C. It's the rule of thumb. So how would Harendra go about getting this up from a C? Well, the first thing would be he goes in here and says, thanks, Tim, C+. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. You know? Because like that step, that communication is incredibly important in this kind of collaborative code environment, right? If I'm working on a project with Adam and I just like disappear for a week and he's doing all these updates and I don't ever go in and say, looks good, or thanks, man, he's going to wonder, right? So don't leave your mentor wondering. Like, let them know you saw what they provided for you. They want to help you, so work with them. So, you know, you know what else you should do is like give me an avatar picture there. Yeah, that would be good, right? So then we build this dialogue here. And as we do, this work gets better. And it's right there beside what you did, okay?
While we're coding, is it okay to use alternative solutions? Like, let's say you provide something, and I'm going to say, you know what, I want to do it a little bit differently. Is that okay?
It is, as long as you are demonstrating that you understood what the lesson was. Here's what I mean by that.
Okay.
I, for instance, don't do jQuery. There won't be any jQuery in this stuff. So if you do a solution that uses jQuery, it's like you're not really showing that you've learned how to do it without. You know what I mean? So yeah, do use your original. You're never going to get penalized for using your originality, but you do want to show that you understand the lesson that we've done. On the jQuery point, I'll mention that most modern development shops are getting rid of jQuery, like killing it, ripping it out of all of their projects, because it's not really needed anymore. Everything that jQuery did can now be done in ES6 JavaScript. So it's typically only used with stuff that is prior ES5 stuff, which most companies are trying to get away from. So sorry, Taras. Yeah. So let's keep going here. Let's get into it. Let's make a little React stuff happen here. So I'm going to head back to my professor mode. And the first thing we'll do is we'll bring in a couple of script tags that we need. Let's revise our HTML just a little bit. First off, you know, this really isn't good at all. Let's structure it. In the HTML doc, even though we're doing a web application, you still have to follow the structure where you've got a head and a body. Okay, and then I'll put HTML tag around the whole thing. How am I doing on time, guys?
1 hour, 14 minutes.
We've got 1 hour? Nice. We are right on track. Okay, so go ahead and get yourself set up. If you want, you can do the tabbing and so forth. But a nice feature of CodePen here is this little tidy HTML. I like it. If you click on the little arrow here, and you click on tidy HTML, boop, it basically spaces things out for you, which can be really nice when you get quite a lot of HTML going on here. It'll put tabbing in and stuff like that. Okay. So, first things first. In the head, we want to put in a meta tag. Now this is not React stuff. This is just good practice. So sing out if you know what I'm doing here. You seen this one before? The viewport meta. We're going to say content equals width equals device width with a dash in there. And then we're going to say initial scale. Here, let me make this a little more room here so you can grab these bars and move them, just so you know. I can. Boop, boop, boop. That's better, right? And then it's initial scale equals 1.0. Just like that. Okay, you always want to put this viewport meta in there, and here's why. If a person comes to the thing you're building on their phone, for instance, you've probably come across websites on your phone where it's like you go to it and everything's like super tiny, and then you got to like scale it up, and then you have a tiny little piece to look in and you got to like drag it around. Not a very nice experience, right? And the reason why is because, number one, they haven't put this viewport information in here. What this says is basically the area that I'm going to work in, whatever device it is that's looking at my site, use whatever size they have available, and set the scale to 1.0. So in other words, so if the person was like zoomed in before they came to your site, it's going to reset it. So it is a point for responsive. It's like the starting point of responsive. Nope. Nope. This is built-in meta information of the browser. The initial scale is to set it to 1.0, in other words, 100% scale. Yeah. So, so for instance, like just so you know, when you're working in CSS, and you set something in pixels, you know, like say you set the width to be like 200 px, that CSS pixel is not a real pixel, okay? Because if you think about it, like my phone, here. Where's my phone? Ah, there we go. This is like a little bit older. It's like a Google Next. This thing has, in terms of its actual pixels, is HD. So it has 1920 by 1080. But if you bring up the browser inside of this, you do not get that many pixels to work with. You actually only get like something like 480 pixels with. A CSS pixel is not the same as an actual screen pixel. And the reason why they do that is because there's so many different screen densities now. Right? Like this is a few years old now. Now you got phones with like 4K on them, right? So if you think about it, if CSS pixels were real pixels, everything would be so tiny on there because the pixels are so dense. So what is the CSS pixel based on? You're going to think I'm lying, but I'm totally not lying. It's based on a Flemish word called an elm. You ever heard of it? An elm is the distance when you make a 90-degree bend at your elbow and view at eye height, right? That distance is called an elm, and they set it to 96 dpi at 1 elm. So what it means is like you're basically dealing with 96 dpi no matter what the density of your device is. The browser is automatically converting the pixels that are on here to like 1 elm-based pixel. So it's a big mystery to people who are working in CSS because like I know this has like 1020 pixels on it. Why can't I use them? It never works the way it's supposed to, and that's why. So presently I'll show you some resources where you can see like the screen density versus the actual CSS pixels available to you for all of the popular devices. So what this says is your scaling that you should use is basically that one elm. It creates a standard across all the devices that we can rely on in CSS. But if it's not in there, your browser may not do that, which is problematic for us. That sounds a little weird. If you want to see some more about that stuff, if you're curious and you're like, no, he made it up. There's no such thing as a Flemish elm. Down here in the resources, there's one. Oh, did I take it out? Lab 1. Oh, you know what? It's in Lab 2. In Lab 2, down in the resources here, there's a what are PX, what are CSS pixels. If you want the full technical explanation on that, it's in Lab 2. So just a note here, guys. Good practice. You might want to look at the next couple of labs here ahead of time and look at the code examples. You have a pretty good idea what we're going to be doing in the next few labs. That's something new too. I never had that before.
I don't know if you told about that in the beginning of the class, but how are you going to work with the classes? Because you're going to have like Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah.
And I don't think
I know. It's difficult, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it is still the same schedule for us. So like, even though I'm going to see you guys tomorrow, the reviewers won't be looking at today's stuff until like the next day.
But how are you going to work, like not for example this week, but the other weeks? How are you going to do for the assignments? You're going to give us Tuesday, and we need to hand in like the other Tuesday? Because
There's going to be some overlap there, yeah. So this is why I say the best thing is like just submit at the beginning of class, then you can't go wrong. And then 2 days from now, so what'll happen is like, not tomorrow, but the next day, your reviewer will look at what we did today, and then they'll be looking at what we're doing tomorrow, the next day. Yeah, that's the only way we can do it.
But ours, like each class, we're going to do something different, but in class.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I apologize for that. It's I had to figure out something with this condensed course. It's a little weird.
We're going to give things like at home, and then we're going to have the week to do. But if it's in class, it's okay.
It is in class, but when your reviewer looks at it, they will probably give you something to do. But you have the whole week to do it.
Okay, then.
Yeah.
Can you work ahead of the assignments?
No. No. If you try to submit ahead, the system will not let you. How can you submit something I haven't taught? That would mean like I have no value.
It's not that. Yeah.
No, for you eager beavers, you can't submit ahead. Okay, so let me jump back to lab 1 here and back into the actual code. So we've got our viewport in there. Let's keep going. So if we want to work in React, we are going to need to bring in the code for React. So we're going to need a script tag in here. So let me throw one in here first off. I'm going to say script. Oh, what's going on here? Oh, that's what's going on. Thank you. I thought that looked weird. There we go. Much better. Okay. So now let's put a script tag in here. And we're going to need the source, which will be, I'm getting it from CDN.js, which is like an online hosting for JavaScript libraries. So it's Cloudflare. Libraries, React, and then it's 15.6.0, which is the most up-to-date version. Okay, and then don't forget to close your script tag. So all of this right here. So, you know, like for this, you might want to copy it from the professor session and paste it into yours, just so you don't get a typo in there. Because there's no big mystery there. We're just putting in the URL. So it's going to reach out to this server called Cloudflare and get the most up-to-date version of the React library. But React is not just one tool. There's two parts to it. This one is React, but we need a second tool called React DOM. I'll talk about that while I'm bringing it in here. So React was built to be used not just in the browser. Have you heard of this thing called React Native? React Native is used for building Android and iOS applications. So you can take your exact same skills that you are learning for the browser and now build native applications with it. But since we're working in the browser, we need to bring in a tool called React DOM. So again, we're going to go cdn.js.cloudflare.com. Bring in from the libraries, React 15.6.0, so whoop, .0, and then it's react-dom.js. Now, that is all we really need to bring in to get working with React. This is another reason people like it. It's very small. React is not big, so it loads super fast. We're almost ready, but we need at least one item in the body here. So here's what I'd say. Let's put a little div in here, and we'll give it an ID, just called app. Now, in many React applications, your HTML is done. You're never going to touch it again in most React applications, which is pretty cool. I'll show you what I mean by that. So once you've got that, now we don't have anything showing on the screen here, but if you wanted, you could. You know, there's no reason you can't put more HTML in here. You know? So you can totally do it. And CodePen has live reload. So any changes that you make are going to automatically appear right here inside of this area, which is really nice. It's nice being able to see your work as you're doing it without having to save it and refresh a browser. So another little feature of the class that I'll point out. See this little chat window down here? Hey. So if you run into a problem as you're working, because you've got the URL for your pen, drop it in this chat window here, and we'll bring it up and we'll debug it together. So, you know, keep an eye on that one. So periodically I'll check that. And if you're having an issue, we can fix it together, which is like, you know, obviously more eyes makes for better debugging. Okay, so I'm pretty much done with the HTML. Let's just ignore CSS for the moment. I almost expected cheers. So we'll jump over into JavaScript here. And we're going to make our first little React component. Oh, it's going to be really tough, guys. You ready for this? super hard. Try this. So we're going to say const first component equals 2 little round brackets, and then this. Have you seen this? It's called a fat arrow because it's fat and it looks like an arrow. Basically. I'll talk about it more. But right after this, watch this madness. This is me sticking HTML in my JavaScript. Crazy, right? I know, right? It's nuts. Hey, you got to respect mom. So in order to get this to work, guys, we're writing what we call the ES6 JavaScript. So in 2015, they made this new version of JavaScript called ES6. It is much, much nicer to work in, and it solves a lot of problems of JavaScript. But because there are people on older browsers who maybe can't see the newer version of JavaScript, we have to turn on a little tool here. It's called Babel. And the nice thing about CodePen is that they built this tool in for you. Now in later lessons, I'm going to show you how you can install and get Babel running on your local desktop, okay? But I don't want to wait. I don't want to have to do a bunch of big installation before I can start writing some good code here. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to click on this little gear right up here, see where I'm pointing to. This allows you to customize some of the settings of CodePen. So I'll click on that, and we're going to go to something called the JavaScript preprocessor. So clicking here. So here I am on the JavaScript right here. See where it says JavaScript preprocessor? I'm going to select Babel, or Babel, or Babel. I don't know what you would say. And then I'll save it. And you see how like the little green goes away here? This tells us that our ES6 JavaScript is working now. So what do we got here? This may look a little strange, this little round brackets here. In ES6, this is a function. So you know how normally you'd have to write function and then put the round brackets? Yes. Well, with the new one, they said, that's stupid. Why are we writing function all the time? We can just have the round brackets. So round brackets is a function now, you know? So it just made it a little easier, less chance of typos, which is really nice. And then this little arrow here that they call the fat arrow, or the arrow function, it basically just points at it and says like, here's what the result of my function is this, what I'm pointing at.
It's a reference, right?
Yeah, so we've now got a function called first component that produces an h1 tag. This h1 tag here is called JSX. Okay, it looks like HTML, smells like HTML, works like HTML. It's not quite HTML. It's like 99% HTML, but there's one or two little small things you got to know that I will show you. Oh, yeah, good question. Yeah, const stands for constant. Yeah, this is, again, a new ES6 thing. This is the same as saying var to make a variable, right? So first component here is now a variable. But const, what const does for you, it basically says, this is a variable that should stay constant. You can never change it.
Oh,
yeah.
Global.
Yes and no. The difference is that globals can change. That's what causes the problem. But const cannot change. So this first component is always going to be this function with this result here. No changing it. And if you try and change it, it'll throw an error and say, no, you can't do that. This is like, that's actually very, very good because it solves that problem that globals have where some other piece of code out there knows about it and changes it. Now everything breaks. Well, now it can't do that because it's a const. That's really nice. I'll show you these various ES6 features as we go. Let's get our new React component on the screen, shall we? Let's do it. So right underneath of there, let's put a new line. We're going to reach out to the React DOM. So where's this coming from? Well, you see our second script tag here, how it's called React DOM. So we are now talking to the piece of code that we brought in with this script tag. And what do we want them to do? We're going to tell them render. What do we want to render? Our first component. Now it's not quite there yet because it doesn't know where to render it to, but that's why we were so smart that we put a div in here. We're going to tell it, find that div and render my component at that div. So right here, we're going to say document, query selector, remember that one? And we'll tell it to find the app div. Oh man, hi mom. That's it. We made our first React component there. It's the simplest of all components. Like, I say the simplest, but in React, there's only 2 kinds of components. That's the other thing that's nice. There's only 2 kinds. This one we just made here is called a stateless function. And about 90% of your application, catch you later, man. About 90% of your application is going to be these stateless components. Yeah. So what we've made, our first component is called a stateless function. Now it is pretty cool to know about these components because they're actually kind of new in React. They were only introduced into React about 1.5 years ago, so a lot of people are still learning about them. If you know about them, that's a big plus for you. Now eventually we're going to learn the second component, which is like a stateful component. Yeah, stateful component. Yeah. So this one's stateless, and the other one's stateful. The difference is the stateful component has a memory. This one does not. This guy, all a stateless function does is put something on the screen. You know? He's pretty simple. But he does have some nice features. Let's try something out here. Let's make this little component here a little bit dynamic. So we'll expand on it. Let's make a second component. So keep your first one, but now let's say const second component equals, and we put our little round brackets and our arrow. But this one's going to have a little bit more to it. So just like you would normally do with a function, let's put some curly braces so that we can put a couple of lines of code in there. There we go. So let's try something. In here, I'm going to make a variable. I'll call this one greeting equals my friend, exclamation mark. It's a good friend. So what I'm shooting for here is that I want to be able to say, hi, Tim, my friend, you know? And I want to be able to change this greeting in here to whatever I want to change the messaging here. So something typical like you might see when somebody's logging in, right? You'll see a little thing that says like, hey, Bob, it's been 12 days since you logged in, something like that. So if we're wanting to make something like that, here's an approach. After this, if we are returning more than one line of HTML, here's how we do it. We have to specifically say return and put some round brackets, okay? Inside of those round brackets, we can now write as much JSX as we want. So we can put divs, we can put sections, we can put navs, links, whatever we want. So let's try this. Let's try, we'll put a little div. A little div here. An opening and a closing. And inside of here, I'll maybe do an H3. And I will say, hi, Tim. And watch this cool stuff. I can put in a little curly braces here and put my variable in it. Watch what happens. So I'll close my H3. Okay. Now, anybody can make a guess. Why am I still seeing hi, Mom, and I'm not seeing hi, Tim with my greeting here?
It's constant. You put it in constant, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the first component was set on constant where we cannot change it.
Oh, this one's also constant. Yeah, I didn't render it. Somebody said, anyway, whoever said that, you're like smart people. So, whoa, I want a fan club. So if we want to see our second component, we have to render it. So boom, there we go. Hello, Tim, my friend. So you see how that works? It's getting a little smarter now. Because now, here we've got this little greeting variable. Let's say we're not friends. Let's say we're enemies. Ah, with like 2 exclamation marks. So what's going on here? This is one of the big strengths of a system like React here. We can put JavaScript expressions into the HTML. You can't do that over here, can you? Right? If I was to put in like, some curly brackets in here and put something in it, it's just going to show curly brackets and whatever I put in there. HTML is dumb. It doesn't have any ability to evaluate variables like that. So think about what we could do with something like this. Let's say, for instance, we wanted to have a clock. All we need is a way of updating this once a second to show the current time. And it will just render. Pretty nice, right? We didn't have to make any selectors here. No querying the DOM to find a particular area and then rewriting its inner HTML. We didn't have to do any of that stuff. Pretty nice, pretty nice. Let's go a little bit further here. Let's make a third component. So by now you're starting to get the, oh, you want to throw it in the chat window? Okay, I'll be right with you. Get started, make yourself a third component. So look at the structure, you're going to need those round brackets in our curly braces. So while you guys are doing that, let's take a look at the help lines. We have our first, yeah, nice try, Molly54. All right, let's go to Emily here. And let's see what we got. So Emily's building a cool React app. I like that. Let's look in the HTML. So the first thing I'm looking for is the div here. Because if it's not, then the renderer won't know where to put it in the page, right? So it looks like it is there. And over here, React DOM, render, looks like it is selecting the right div. So that looks okay to me. The other thing just to be careful about, I'm just double checking and making sure that Babel is turned on. Because you could have maybe missed, clicking the gear and turning on Babel, but it is turned on. So there's got to be something else going on here. That's a nice greeting. So first things first, let me open up my developer tools by pressing on the F12. That will show me if there's any kind of like, oh, what is this? What? You know what? I don't believe this error is coming from Emily's code. This is coming from CodePen. But I can turn on the little filter here and say, just show me errors from CodePen. Did you guys notice this before? When you look in your console, you've got this little drop down here that says, only show me errors from a certain part of the code. So I'm selecting your pen so that I only see your errors. Let's see if there's anything. Okay, well, let's see if we can. Oh, the bottom one. React DOM is not defined. That makes me think maybe there's a typo in your script tag. Do you think that's possible? Let's see. So this is the one for React DOM. Cloudflare, Ajax, libs. Do you see it? Oh. What? I don't see it.
On top.
What?
Above.
Here?
No,
Up here? Oh, right there. Okay. Yeah. There we go. Oh, boom. I love you too. For URLs, it might be a good idea. Okay, great. Anybody else? While we're keeping an eye on the chat window, seems like folks are in pretty good shape. So let's go back to our third component, because I want to show you like one of the most important features of these stateless functions here. It's called props, okay? The two that we've made up to now have been completely self-enclosed, right? Everything they needed to do their job was inside of them already, and they just put something on the screen. But usually the way that we use these components is to say, here, let me give you a piece of information. Now you do your job of showing it on the screen however you choose to show it. Let me show you what I mean. We'll remake our little greeting here, but we'll make it customizable. So finally, we use these little round brackets. Inside of here, you're going to type in props. You're exactly right, Amit. It's parameter. A particular parameter called props here. Yeah. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to combine local memory and the prop that is being passed into this component. So bear with me here. Let's start this off. We'll say const greeting equals hello there. And we'll make our return so we can render this out. Just like before, let's put a little div in here. And I'll use the H3 again. And I'm going to put the greeting in. So there's no big change yet. But in a second there will be. So let's just get this third component rendering on the screen by updating our little React DOM render with the third component. So I should see just the greeting, right? But what I want is it should say like, hello there, Tim, or hello there, Emily, or whoever I wish. Yeah. It is okay because this const will only be visible inside of these braces here. So it's okay to reuse it. You can, yeah. Okay, here's the magic, guys. You've all got your third component showing? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Just like an HTML element, we can give it an attribute. So I'm going to say name equals Timbot right here. When I do that, this name gets put inside this props. So we're actually passing the information into our component now. So now we can customize the component. Watch this. After my greeting, I'll put a space and I'll say props.name. Hello there, Timbot. So you know what we just did? We just made our own HTML element. Completely custom HTML element.
Oh, wow.
I can now use this in any project I wish to make a simple greeting because I can change this name now. So let me do it. Let's try change a name in here. You guys remember Bob, right? He's back. That, my friends, is how React works. So behind the scenes, there's a lot of cool stuff going on here. To your question earlier, people talk about React optimizing the view. The way that it does it is React is constantly watching that virtual DOM, and it's constantly watching for any change happening, and it updates just the piece that needs the change. Unlike the real DOM, which updates the whole page. This is what makes web applications run very slowly and unresponsively and feel bad once they start getting a certain size. You will generally not come across that when you're using React. It's doing all those optimizations for you without you having to do anything. So if this prop ever changes, it will re-render just the section here that needs it. Pretty nice. Prop, you do have to call it props. This is a requirement of React here. But this down here, you can make it whatever you want. You can also put in more of them. So let's say I want to say, hi there, Bob. You have $50. Well, here I might say like money equals 50. Then here I could say you have, and I look in the props for the money. See, because I called it money in the attribute, dollars. Hey, pretty good, right? So now you're probably thinking like, this is pretty cool. Like I could make some pretty nice stuff with this. How does CSS work? Well, the good news is like, it works the same as it always does. So if I, well, yeah, in tomorrow's lab, I'm going to show you a kick-ass way of doing CSS with React. Something brand new. It only came out like 2 months ago. is a library called styled components. It's fantastic. In a second, we're almost through to today's learning. In a second, I'll show you a little preview of tomorrow. But let me just illustrate something here. If I go into my CSS, I can make selectors the same way that I always have. So let me just target H3s and make them red. And there you go, right? So even though we're over here in the JavaScript, it will eventually turn into equivalent HTML in the page here, at which point any of your styles just kick in the same way that they always would. But I'll show you one little caveat. Let's say instead of targeting the H3, probably you wouldn't do that. You'd probably target like a class, right? So here's the thing. In your H3, if you try and just say class equals something, and then over here, I make this a class selector. See how that's not working? This is one of the few little exceptions that sort of reminds you that you're not really working in HTML. Instead of saying class, you have to say class name. And then it'll work. Okay? Now the reason why is because even though it looks exactly like we're working in HTML, technically this is still JavaScript. And JavaScript already uses the word class. I'm going to actually show you that in an upcoming lesson. So,
why are you adding the values to the render? The method?
Yeah, down here. So this is how.
Go somewhere else.
Oh, we could. Yeah, you're thinking the right way. This is the most basic example we can do. But as we go along, you're going to see that the way that you compose your application is by taking components and putting them inside other components, right? So what we'd probably do is take these attributes, give them to a parent, and then that parent would give them to the child, and then we render the whole thing. Yeah.
So you might start off by saying like name, Bob, money, 50, weather, hot, whatever, and then
Good comeback.
you would look for those values anywhere in the JavaScript and put them where the props are. No?
No. With the component system, the props always go from parent to child. So the main skill of React is figuring out what should be a parent and what should be a child. So we're going to do a bunch of lessons to really get used to that. Because remember I was saying like at the start, my goal is not to turn you into like Super Joe Pro expert in 7 weeks. It's to get you to a point where you could be helpful and productive to a more experienced developer. And one of the main things they're going to need from you is an understanding of how to put parents and children together in these components. Let me show you a couple more resources you can look in. We're probably getting a little low on time here.
Okay, I got one more question.
Yep.
So basically React acts as a protector of code itself, whereas if something changes, the whole thing doesn't fall apart. It targets specific areas.
Yes. It takes your big application and busts it up into individual components. And then you just combine those components together like Legos to make your application. And the other big thing is it makes us never touch the DOM directly. That right there saves us so many bugs. So let me show you another thing here. Let me jump back. How much time do I have? How are we doing? Okay, it's not bad. There's some more resources in here. These learning examples as well. And then down here in the practical applications, for instance, if you click on example 1.1 here, you know, it's the same thing that we've been doing, but just like styled up the way that you might see in any kind of application that you're building here. So do take a little look at some of those examples there, because like, obviously what I'm doing is pretty basic, but if you give me something like this, you know, that's where you get to your A+. You know what I mean? If you just give me back, like if, look at the difference between these two. Here's me. Here's Devin. Me, Devin. Which one do you give the A?
You.
In reality, you know, like this just sort of like, this doesn't change the lesson. It shows that what we were doing, she understands, but it takes it to another level to show like, okay, I can see where we could use this. That's what we're after here, right? So, so I want to show you one more thing really quick, because I mentioned to you guys about unit tests. So you might be curious, like, what does unit tests look like? So let me show you a little example here. So, because I want you guys to get used to these things, even though we're just making very basic components here. Back in the resources, let's bring up this unit test example here. So see down here, this little finger on the bottom that says Jasmine, and it says it has 4 specifications and 0 failures, right? So what this means is that like there's 4 little tests in here that test my components to make sure they're doing what they should be doing. And once they are, boop, it automatically passes. So let me show you how that works. So the first thing that we need is one more part of React right down here. See how it says React with add-ons, right? So React comes with a whole set of tools for doing testing. I'm going to make a little basic test here. Let's do one. It's fun, I swear. When you hear test, it isn't like, oh my God, I'm testing you right now. It's not like that. A unit test is a little piece of code that says, you know, when I can execute okay, that means you did your job right. Now that's good, because the last thing you want is that senior developer hovering over top of you, watching everything you do, and bugging you about everything you do, right? So he's not going to do that. He's going to give you this little unit test and say, do it however you want. Use your initiative. What coding style you use, great, go for it. Because my little test is going to make sure I get what I need. So let's try one out. We'll do a little simple one here. So the first thing I'm going to need is this React with add-ons script right here. So I'll bring it over into my professor mode. And I'll put it right after React. So here's where I brought in React. So I'll put in this script tag right here. Boop. Just like that. And then, yeah, so it goes React, then React with add-ons, and then React DOM. Yeah. So we need that. And then you notice this nice little thing on the bottom here that says Jasmine that gives us this report. We need some script for that as well. So right down here, we need 2 things. A style sheet, and then these script tags for Jasmine. See how it says Jasmine in the URL there? So I'm going to grab these guys. I'll just take this whole little chunk here. Yeah, let's grab the whole thing. Boop. There. Copy that. And we'll bring that into our project. Boop. So here's what it all looks like. Now you see what happened down below in my pen there? Isn't that cool? So Jasmine's running already. It's saying, no specs found. So it's basically saying, like, I'm ready to do any tests you want, but you know, I didn't find any tests. So you pass. So let's adjust that a little bit. We're going to make a little test for our first little basic component that we did. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay.
Bless you.
Okay, let's do it. So we're going to go back to the JavaScript, and we'll just go all the way down to the bottom and make a new little section here. And we'll just put a little note for ourselves that here's where we're doing the testing.
Why so many tags?
I don't know, just so I can see it easily. Now here's the way it works, guys. To make a test, we use this word describe, where we, believe it or not, describe what we're testing. So I'll say test number 1 is to render my component. And then we create a function. So it's round brackets, arrow, and then our curly braces. So this is our ES6 style function. Unit tests are almost like spoken language. So I'm saying that my test is to render my component, and I want to know that the component, it renders a little H1 for me. That's my requirement. That's all I need this component to do, is to put an H1 on the screen. But this could be a valuable test, right? Because what if the person changed it to something that's not an H1? Like, I don't know, what if they made it a nav instead of an H1? That'd be a big problem, right? So this is actually a useful little test here. So here's what we do. We say it renders an H1. And again, we make a little function with our round brackets and arrow. Okay, so inside of this function here, to do our test, we're going to get React to take our first component and actually invisibly put it in the page and test the result. So this is where React utilities give us some nice little tools to work with. So inside of here, I'm going to say, okay, let's make a component by getting the test utilities to render into document. And I know I'm doing a bunch of things here because I kind of want you to see the full example here before we're done today. But we'll do more of these, right? So just kind of follow along with me. We'll explain it more as we go. But let's get this first test working so you can see it. So I'll say render into the document. Now, here's the thing. unit tests cannot test stateless functions on their own. What we have to do is make a little wrapper component, and like to Mike's point, this will be our first example of taking our simple little stateless component and putting it inside another one that is more capable, and then we run our test on the more capable one. Because stateless components are very dumb. They can't really talk back to React or to the unit test to give us any information. So follow along with me here. And let's make, up top here, a little wrapper. Now remember when we tried to add our class to our component to style it red, and we said you can't say class equals? Here's why. Class is a reserved word in ES6 JavaScript. So I'm going to say class wrapper extends React dot component. So believe it or not, guys, we are now writing the second of two kinds of React components. This is the stateful component we're making right now. We're going to do a bunch more of them. Don't worry if you don't recognize what you're seeing right now. We're into the bonus portion of the class. So inside of here, I'll say render. And there's lots of examples of these in Leaflet as well. But I'll say return this dot props dot children. And that's it. We need one more thing. See down here how we're talking about test utilities? Well, we have to let it know where to find those. So I'm going to say const test utils equals React add-ons test utils. Hey, do you see how Jasmine changed? It's saying like, I have a spec, you have a failure in this. We haven't finished the unit test yet, but you see how this works, right? Like this is like constantly watching our code, and it's now saying, well, I have a test that you haven't passed yet. Let's keep going. We'll get this passing in the next minute or two. So down here, we can now do our render into document. So here's what it's going to look like. We're going to render our wrapper. Just like that. And inside of it, we'll put our first component. Okay, so what is this first one doing here? Invisibly render the first component into the page. So this is what we call the precondition, right? Before we can test what it's outputting, we've got to actually put it in the page. We want to test it in real conditions here. So let's go to the actual test now. So if it's put this first component in the page, then I should be able to find an H1 somewhere inside this component, right? If it's passing. So let's do it. Right here, I'm going to say, go looking for that H1. I'll say const H1 equals test utils dot find rendered DOM component with Tag. Okay, that was pretty long. I'll admit it. But we're almost there. So I'm going to say, go looking in the component, and you're going to look for an H1. So we've got 2 parts done now. So up here, we said this is a precondition. This is what to run the test on. And the last step is the condition of the test. Here's what it looks like. We're going to say expect H1 dot to be defined. Hey, you looking at your test down there? 0 failures. We're passing our test, right? Why are we passing our test? Well, look at your first component. Does it render an H1? Let's go all the way back to the beginning. It does indeed. Pretty cool, right? Now, I don't want to freak you guys out. I went a little bit fast at the end there, right? But remember what I said. This is the chunk that would usually be done by the more advanced developer. So in this scenario, what would happen is the developer would say, okay, here's your test unit. You would take a look at it, and you'd need to know just enough to be able to say, oh, he wants me to give an H1 in this component. Okay, let me make my component. And then you do what we did at the start of the class there. You know what I mean? Yeah. So let's say, here, let me mess it up. Let me change that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I went a little bit fast there. So you might want to step through it a little bit.
We have a class of 1140 though, in a different
Yeah?
Yes, 1140.
Okay, well, we did what we needed to do today. We're at the end there. But again, like if you go in Leaflet and you look at some of those examples in there, you'll see several more examples with this stuff. And then there's some little challenges you can try where if you try out the challenge, it'll say like, my test is failing, fix the component so it passes type of thing, right? So those are for you to try out on your own if you want to get more used to this stuff.
So to get a better mark, you just fix things up a little better.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. If you take a crack at them, then just put a little note in your pen that you've submitted if you want us to take a look at your answer to one of the challenges.
Oh, you have a challenge already up for
Yeah, let me show you what I mean. Back in the resources here, see how there's some little challenges? So take a look at this one. These are my donkeys. So here's a little challenge for you, right? So it says a unit test is failing, which is true. See how I've got a failure? And if I look in it, it says that it expected the H1 to contain the word visitor. But it doesn't, does it? Up here, it just says hi. There's no visitor in it. So could I fix this component to make the test pass? You know what I mean?
We already submitted the assignment, so we should submit the one we currently have, the same code then?
Yeah. So you've already submitted your pen. Yeah. So if you try out one of these challenges, just copy your URL and put a little note in the pen that you submitted to say, hey, can you look at my answer to the challenge? Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So here's what I'm saying, guys. If you take a crack at one of these little challenges here, just for fun, copy your URL and put a note inside of the pen that you've submitted. So here's what I would do. If I just tried to solve this, I will copy this. I would go back to the one I was working in, put a little note to say, you know, just like that. And we'll take a look. Yeah, yeah.
But if the one before, and we both, I was working on that, like I did mine from this class on that one. I just keep that.
Yes.
It's already like 7 minutes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you're already submitted. No F for you. Yeah. Or, you know, you could also put a note in the feedback area if you want. It's good for you too. So yeah, so here back in Leaflet, what will happen is like 2 days from now, right? Somebody's going to go and say, oh, I'm assigned to be mentor for Alexander. Let me click on review. I'm going to take a look at his code here and give some feedback and give the initial grade, right? So if you didn't want to see the C, you know, you might do something with it over the next couple of days so that before the first review, you've already got something pretty good in there. I'd really recommend that because, like, I'll tell you from my experience, if you take a look at this again tomorrow, maybe tomorrow morning, you'll learn this so much faster. Repetition is the key, you know, frequently looking at it. You can see, like, we didn't make, there is some customization already, right? So Alexander's already on the path to doing something custom here. But you might look at, you know, some of the extended examples and, you know, get some ideas from that. If you turn this into a real scenario where it's like, I don't know, you know, there's so many places you can use a greeting in an application. Use your imagination. Maybe this is like where you go to buy Christmas trees. And it's like, happy holidays, Bob. We have 50 trees in our inventory, and it's got a little bit of a style on it. That'd be,
So, the first example you showed us that Devin did was just kind of like a simple block.
yeah, it didn't have any.
Or you wanted testing? Let's do testing one.
It's really up to you, right? Hers doesn't have any testing in it, but if you think the testing stuff is interesting and you want to learn it, yeah, go for it.
Because I didn't fully grasp it. I mean, I got what you're
Yeah.
doing, but
The test is not required.
okay.
Yeah, it isn't required.
But if you want to play,
But if you take a crack at it, that's a pretty good initiative, I think.
so we just comment it out at the bottom in case we screw up our code. Well, I can't screw up the code. We'll screw it.
Some inflation right there.
What's the problem here?
Well, I think we got to get out of here, but I'll take a look at it. I'll take a look. It's already saved, right? So let's get out of here.
Sorry, Tim, I gotta chase these
Yep.
guys out. The
Yep.
instructor's waiting. So.
Yep, let's get out of here.
Quick question for.
Oh no, I gotta go. I'm gonna get in trouble. But shoot me a message and I'll.
Is it a quick question for the summit deadline?
Yep.
So we just submit the URL in the first day, then we can finish the code